From the book, If Life is a Game, These Are the Rules. 10 Rules for Being Human as introduced in Chicken Soup for the Soul. Chapter 3. There are no mistakes, only lessons. Growth is a process of experimentation, a series of trials, errors, and occasional victories. The failed experiments are as much as part of the process as the experiments that work. Human growth is a process of experimentation, trial and error, ultimately leading to wisdom. Each time you choose to trust yourself and take action, you can never be quite certain how the situation will turn out. Sometimes you're victorious and sometimes you become disillusioned. The failed experiments, however, are no less valuable than the experiments that ultimately prove successful. In fact, you usually learn more from your perceived failures than you do from your perceived successes. Most people feel great disappointment and anger when their plans in which they've invested a great deal of energy, time, and money fall through. The first reaction for most of us is to feel that we have failed. While it is easy enough to jump to this depressing conclusion, it will impede your ability to progress with your life lesson. Rather than viewing your own mistakes as failures and others' mistakes as slights, you can view them as opportunities to learn. As Emerson said, every calamity is a spur and a valuable hint. Every situation in which you do not live up to your own expectations is an opportunity to learn something important about your own thoughts and behaviors. Every situation in which you feel wronged by another person is a chance to learn something about your reactions. Whether it is your own wrongdoing or someone else's, a mistake is simply an opportunity to evolve further along your spiritual path. When you consider the hardships of life, the disappointments, hurts, losses, illnesses, all the tragedies you may suffer, and shift your perception to see them as opportunities for learning and growth, you become empowered. You can take charge of your life and rise to its challenges instead of feeling defeated, victimized, or cast adrift. A wonderful story that illustrates this is from The Speed of Light by Gwyneth Cravens. Assad told her story. It was about a young girl from Morocco whose father was a spinner. He became prosperous in his craft and took her with him on a voyage in the Mediterranean. He wanted to sell his thread and told his daughter that she should also look for a young man who would make her a good husband. But a storm caused the ship to flounder near Egypt, killing the father and casting the daughter ashore. Miserable and exhausted, barely able to remember her previous life, the girl wandered in the sand until she finally met a family of weavers. They took her in and taught her how to make clothes. Eventually, she became centered and contented. But after a few years, she was captured on the seashore by slavers, who then sailed east to Istanbul and took her to its slave market. A man who made ships went to the market to buy slaves to help him with his work. But when he noticed the girl, he took pity on her, bought her, and took her home to serve his wife. But pirates stole the cargo he invested in, and he was unable to buy the other slaves. He, the girl, and his wife had to make all the mast themselves. The girl worked hard and conscientiously. The mast maker found her to be so capable that he eventually granted her freedom and made her a partner in his business, which she came to enjoy. One day, he asked her to accompany a shipment of mast to Java. She agreed. But off the coast of China, the ship was struck by a typhoon. Again, she was washed upon a strange seashore, and again she cried out against fate. "Why do these bad things keep happening to me?" she asked. No answer came. She got up out of the sand and started walking inland. There was a legend in China that a foreign woman would appear and make a tent for the emperor. Because nobody in China knew how to make tents, the whole population, including one generation of emperors after another, wondered about this prediction. Once a year, the emperor sent out emissaries to every town to bring all the foreign women to the royal court. In due course, the shipwrecked women arrived before the emperor, who asked her through an interpreter if she could make a tent. "I think I can," she said. She asked for a rope, but the Chinese had none, And so, recalling her girlhood as the daughter of a spinner, she asked for silk and spun it into a rope. She asked for thick cloth, but the Chinese had none. And so, recalling her life among the weavers, she wove the sorry, she wove the kind of cloth used for tents. She asked for tent poles, but the Chinese had none. And so, recalling her life with a mast maker, she made tent poles. When she had all these things ready, she tried to remember as best she could all the tents she had seen in her life. At last, she put together a tent. The emperor marveled at the construction and at the fulfillment of the old prophecy, and offered whatever she wished. She married a handsome prince, remained in China, surrounded by her children, and lived to be a happy old age. And she realized that although her adventures had seemed terrible when they were happening, they turned out to be essential for her ultimate happiness. The girl in Assad's story saw, in hindsight, the magic within her dreadful circumstances. She was able to see the perfection in the grand scheme of things. While it is not always easy for us to view our situations from a macro perspective, it is essential in order to find the good in what appears to be unfortunate circumstances. To ease this process of learning, you must first master the basic lesson of compassion, forgiveness, ethics, and ultimately humor. Without these essential lessons, you remain trapped in your limited view and unable to parlay mistakes into valuable learning opportunities. And that's it for that. So I hope you enjoyed it. I think that lesson and that story is one that I always go back to and think about when things are happening, and it makes me think about how in hindsight it was all worth it. So whatever it is that you're going through, always think that in hindsight it's worth it, because you never know. And I hope this story helps with that. So thanks for listening. If you would like to get the book, the author is Cherie Carter Scott, Ph.D. So have a great Friday.